On April 9, 1241, the rolling plains of Silesia became the stage for one of the most desperate stands in medieval Europe. The Mongol Horde, an unstoppable storm from the east, had already crushed kingdoms and razed cities, and now their thunderous hooves echoed across Poland. At Legnica, Duke Henry II the Pious gathered knights, miners, and peasants into a fragile coalition, determined to halt the tide. What followed was a clash of steel and strategy, smoke and slaughter, a day when Europe's fate hung by a single thread. This is Era High, where history speaks. The road to Legnica. The year was 1241, and Europe was a land fractured by ambition and rivalry. While kings and dukes quarreled over borders and thrones, a far greater danger was galloping toward them from the east. The Mongol Empire, forged in the fire of Genghis Khan's conquests, was now under the command of his heirs, and their eyes were set on the heart of Europe. Hungary was the main prize, but strategy demanded a diversion. Under the brilliant mind of General Subutai, a separate Mongol force would sweep into Poland to prevent reinforcements from ever reaching the Hungarian plains. The task fell to Princes Kadan and Baidar, who brought with them the deadly precision of the steppe warriors, swift horse archers, disciplined heavy cavalry, and an unbreakable chain of battlefield communication. Their path was marked in fire and blood. First Sandomierz, then Tursko, then Chmielnik, each a crushing victory that left Polish resistance in tatters. On March 24th, Palm Sunday, Krakow fell, its streets reduced to ash. The Mongols turned toward Silesia, knowing that Duke Henry II the Pious stood between them and the open road south. Henry's dream was to unite the Polish lands under his crown, but now survival itself was the only goal. He called upon his vassals, neighboring lords, and foreign orders. Knights from Moravia answered the call, as did Bavarian miners, and a small but battle-hardened contingent of Templars. Yet the enemy was fast, too fast. News reached Henry that King Wenceslas of Bohemia was on the march with a powerful army, but still days away. The Mongols would not wait. The trap was already closing. Duke Henry's stand. Duke Henry II. The Pious knew he was outmatched in speed, numbers, and the art of war. But surrender was not in his nature. From his stronghold in Silesia, he summoned every sword he could muster. His forces became a patchwork of Europe's defenders, proud Polish knights from Lesser and Greater Poland, Moravian contingents under Duke Boleslav, sturdy Bavarian miners fresh from the goldfields of Złotowia, and a scattering of foreign volunteers. Among them rode the red-cloaked Knights Templar, their discipline and steel unmatched, though their numbers were barely more than a few dozen. Henry's strength was in his heavy cavalry, armored men and horses bred for the shock of the charge. But time was his greatest enemy. He hoped to hold the Mongols long enough for King Wenceslas to arrive from Bohemia, bringing a far larger army. Yet the Mongols were masters of choosing the time and place of battle, and they were already moving to force his hand. The decision weighed heavily: wait behind the walls of Legnica and risk starvation under siege, or ride out and meet the invaders in open ground. Henry chose the field. He would not be remembered as a duke who hid while the enemy burned his lands. The two forces drew closer, steppe dust mingling with the cold spring air. To the east, the Mongols spread across the plain in a loose formation, their banners snapping in the wind. To the west, Henry's army formed its lines, knights at the center, infantry on the flanks, reserves in the rear. On this open ground, there would be no hiding, no second chances. One way or another, the fate of Silesia would be decided here, the battlefield. The morning of April 9th, 1241, dawned cold and clear over the plains of Legnica Pole. The ground was open, almost treeless, bordered by small rivers and patches of early spring grass. To the untrained eye, it looked like any other Silesian meadow, but today it would become a killing ground. Duke Henry's army formed in measured lines. The first rank, a mix of German and Polish cavalry, bristled with lances and banners. Behind them, the second line held more knights from Krakow and Opole. The flanks were guarded by infantry, peasants armed with spears, axes, and even farming tools, their courage outstripping their equipment. In reserve, Henry kept his best: the Silesian Knights, a handful of mercenaries, and the elite Templars, their white mantles marked with the Red Cross. Across the field, the Mongols prepared in their own way. Baidar and Khadan deployed their forces in a wide crescent, the famed T formation. Light horse archers formed the outer wings, ready to encircle. Heavy cavalry waited behind, their armor glinting in the pale sun. The highest ground was claimed by the Mongol commander, from where colored flags would direct every movement with precision, a battlefield language that allowed them to act as one mind. It was a contest of two worlds, the rigid, disciplined charge of the European knight against the fluid, deceptive mobility of the steppe warrior. Between them stretched a no-man's land soon to be filled with dust, smoke, and blood. Clash of tactics. The first move belonged to Henry. His forward cavalry spurred ahead, lances lowered, thundering toward the Mongol vanguard. The shock of the charge drove the enemy back. A brief surge of hope rippled through the Christian lines. But to the Mongols, this was all part of the plan. In a flawless display of their signature feigned retreat, the Mongol vanguard turned and fled, their banners fluttering as if in panic. The European cavalry, sensing victory, broke formation to give chase. Step by step, they drifted farther from the supporting infantry. This was exactly what Baidar and Khadan had intended. Then came the signal. Mongol warriors set fire to the dry grass, and thick smoke rolled across the plain. Vision blurred, the air turned foul, and confusion spread among Henry's riders. From the haze, arrows hissed, relentless, accurate, and deadly. The trap closed. From both flanks, Mongol light cavalry swept inward, striking the exposed infantry. At the same time, heavy cavalry charged from the front, driving into the scattered knights. European discipline began to crumble. Some units fought desperately, others turned to flee. In minutes, the careful lines of Henry's army dissolved into chaos. The Mongols, masters of timing and coordination, pressed their advantage without mercy. What had begun as a promising charge was now a fight for survival. The fall of Henry II. Through the smoke and slaughter, Duke Henry II fought to hold his army together. His reserve, the proud Silesian Knights and the Templars, threw themselves into the fray, buying precious moments for the shattered infantry. But the Mongols were everywhere, striking from the flanks, loosing arrows into any gap, and harrying every attempt at regrouping. As the lines collapsed, Henry realized the battle was lost. Surrounded by a small guard, he tried to break through and escape toward Legnica. They fought their way through the melee, hooves churning mud, swords rising and falling. Then a spear found its mark, sliding under Henry's arm where his armor was weakest. The Duke staggered, and before his men could pull him clear, Mongol warriors closed in. Arrows struck him as he fell from the saddle. Moments later, he was dragged away from his bodyguards. Whether killed in that instant or executed after capture, the outcome was the same. Henry II the Pious was dead. The victors severed his head and mounted it on a spear, parading it before the gates of Legnica in a grim attempt to force the city's surrender. The defenders refused, but the sight seared itself into memory. When the killing was done, the Mongols moved among the fallen, cutting off the right ear of every European soldier to count the dead. According to later accounts, they filled 9 sacks. The fields of Legnica, once green with spring growth, were now littered with corpses, the air thick with smoke and silence. Aftermath and legacy. The Battle of Legnica was over, and with it, one of Poland's strongest armies lay in ruin. Duke Henry II the Pious was gone. His dream of uniting the Polish lands ended on a blood-soaked field. For the Mongols, it was a victory exactly as planned, a diversion that kept Central Europe's northern armies from aiding Hungary. News of the disaster spread quickly. King Wenceslas of Bohemia, only a day's march away, halted his advance and withdrew to gather more troops. When the Mongols' vanguard caught up with him at Kłodzko, the larger Bohemian force repelled them. But Khadan and Baidar had no interest in a full-scale fight. Their mission was complete. They broke their forces into raiding bands, burning villages and seizing supplies as they crossed the mountains south to join Batu Khan and Subutai. Just 2 days later, their comrades would crush King Bela IV's army at the Battle of Mohi, securing the Mongol grip on Hungary. Legnica marked the farthest west the Mongols reached during the 1241 campaign. In the decades that followed, they would raid Poland again in 1259 and 1287, but they never established lasting control. Still, the memory of April 9th lingered, a reminder of the speed, cunning, and devastation of the Mongol war machine. Today, the battle is commemorated on Poland's Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, its name etched alongside other moments of national sacrifice. And in the echoes of history, Legnica remains a turning point, not because it stopped the Mongols, but because it showed how close Europe came to being remade by them.